Hello, I'm Paul Briley, and you're listening to Off the Comma. On this podcast, we explore all facets of what it means to feel stuck in life. We talk with people just like us who have found themselves sitting on a comma and not knowing where to go next. We'll unpack the experience, where they felt stuck, what they experienced, and what they learned. My goal is to inspire you by seeing yourself in others and finding possibility for yourself. Let's get into this week's conversation. Welcome back to another exciting episode of Off the Comma. Very excited to be here again in this year, 2026. It's kind of crazy that we're here. And where did the last one go? So much could be said about that, right? And seems like we say these things every year. But very excited to have another Off the Comma story this week and to be able to be here and be witness to the story. As with so many of our guests, Peter Stavros, Pete, as we'll sometimes call him, is with us this week. I'm going to let him introduce himself in just a moment. He and I have not met before, so I'm very much looking forward to meeting Pete and learning more about him through his story this week. And so, with that said, I'm not going to ramble like I normally do. Let's jump right in. Pete, welcome to Off the Comma. Why don't you introduce yourself, and why don't you start with how would you like to be known? And then, what else would you like for us to know about you?
Great. Nice meeting you, Paul. I'm excited to be here. Excited to talk with you. I'd say some adjectives for me. I'm creative. I'm resilient. I am definitely, most definitely a work in progress. Still figuring
Mm,
stuff out. And as far as what I do, I write stuff, and I'm at the point now where I can start feel comfortable to introduce myself as a writer because I'm been doing this for a little bit, even though that's not the source of my income. But again, we're talking about who I am as a person. So yeah,
mm.
I'm a writer, and I'm also a recovering attorney, and still a practicing attorney as well. But yeah, I consider myself to be a writer first and foremost. So yeah.
Okay, nice. A couple of things you said, like I love that you acknowledged being a work in progress because I feel like when we get to the point in our lives where we realize that is the truth and not that we've arrived somewhere or what have you, that it really changes things for us, right? So I'm curious to see how that
Yeah.
shows up in your story.
And it just takes the pressure off of me too. It gives me permission to make mistakes and to, have some setbacks because it's just all like a learning process for me, really. And,
Mm,
we'll go into this a bit more, but like this is a whole different space I've entered into the past 5 years in writing. And so I'm just like learning everything about it. And like I said, it's going to be setbacks, going to be a lot of rejections, but there'll be some
mm.
successes as well. So yeah, just give myself permission to, go through it all.
Yeah. Well, and tell me if I'm wrong. Like I'll reflect things throughout our conversation today. So always if I misreflect or if I'm off base, correct me or kind of take me in the right direction. But as you say, being a writer, like and I've talked to a lot of writers on the show here, that kind of implies inherently that you're a storyteller in one vein or another.
Right. And I've always been a storyteller. I mean, going back to my earliest memories, I kept journals when I was a kid, and I
Ugh.
wasn't, super outgoing. I'm still not super outgoing. I consider myself a functioning introvert. I could, be out and about when I need to, but I prefer to be alone. And like I said, as a kid, I was always just making stuff up and telling myself stories. I remember sitting out in the backyard and just like, yeah, telling myself stories. And I've always done that throughout my life. And I was like, well, maybe I shouldn't be doing this. Maybe I should be a professional. Everyone says, oh, be a professional, go to law school, you're young, unattached. And so I did that. And then, of course, 25 years later, you're kind of stuck in it and like, okay, figure this out. You like to write, not too late to start writing again. So,
Hmm.
so yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, Pete, I'm excited to hear more about, how your story unfolds and how these traits and characteristics are going to show up in your story. Before we start with the five questions, one of the things I like to ask every guest is as you think ahead to the next, 35, 40 minutes or so of telling your story with us today, what is your intention for yourself in telling the story?
Just to have my voice heard. Like I said, I'm not that much of a outgoing, talkative person, but I think I've
Mm,
got some good stories to tell. And frankly, I like to listen to these podcasts as well. And maybe someone will listen to this and they'll be prompted to follow their dreams. As cliche as that might sound, to do something they might have kind of put on the back burner, which is what I did for 25 or so years. So maybe someone can get something out of it. And just to talk about it. I enjoy talking about it and talking to you. So
Yeah, awesome. I love that because that, my intention is to support you and your intention. And exactly what you said, right? That there will be people out there who see a little bit of themselves in you and your story. They'll feel a little bit more connected, maybe a little less alone. And exactly like you said, the best of cases, they might feel inspired or empowered to go out and do something that they've been wanting to do. And what I love about this podcast is that, that is my intention with every guest and every single guest who shows up. That seems to be all or part of their intention. And that we can do those things without having to. I love that just telling our story can inspire people without us having to tell people how to be inspired by our story. And you kind of
Exactly.
reinforce that too, because you said you like to listen to podcasts as well.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. Yeah.
nice. Pete, let's jump in with the first of the five questions, and that is, where in your life have you found yourself sitting on a comma?
Yeah. For 25 years, I was in a job that really didn't suit me, and I'm sure this story isn't unique. I'm sure a lot of folks feel the same way, but you kind of just, like I said, I did law school when I was younger in my 20s, and single and attached, might as well get a law degree. You can do anything with a law degree. Well, you can do anything without a law degree too. So,
Mm,
which I found out. But yeah, in 25 years later, and I was very unhappy, physically, mentally, and then I had a really serious health scare in 2011, which sort of caused me to like really start this initial process of like reevaluating my life and what it is that I'm doing. I was laid up for a year. And then after that, it's like I sort of had like a new perspective on my life, even though it still took me another 10, even so years. I don't know, my math isn't that great, but it still took me a while before I finally like took the plunge. But it wasn't something that I just rushed into. I'm thoughtful. I'm a planner. As an attorney, I'm risk adverse. So I always kind of think about, okay, what can go wrong? And sometimes I
mm.
do that to a fault and that kind of gets stuck. So I have to like move on from there. But yeah, that was my comment. I was just really unhappy in my job. Not to poo-poo it. I mean, I know a lot of lawyers who love doing it, and I have family members who are lawyers and they're great at it and they love doing it. And I wasn't completely miserable. I wasn't miserable at all. It's just it wasn't for me. After a while, just like I need to do something else. This is not. And like I said, when you're faced with like a really serious health issue, which is what I happened to me, it kind of like put everything up in kind of perspective, really.
So I've heard a number of things so far, Pete. First of all, like this comma sort of was a 25-year chapter of your life tied to your career. And again, correct me where I'm wrong. And it sounds like you were kind of sitting on this comma for a long time until something caught your attention and then had you to start to reflect. And so I'm hearing you talk about sort of health and mental health and things like that. Lots of time to tell more about your story. I'm kind of curious, like, say more about what it was like to be on the comma, what was happening to you while you were sitting on the comma, and then what, say more about what prompted you to start thinking about potentially getting off the comma or going in a different direction.
So yeah, I mean, we could start at the beginning. My first 10 years or so as a lawyer, I was a corporate litigator, really high stakes cases, and it was interesting work. It was important work, but it didn't, match with my personality. I'm more of a reserved person. I don't like
Mm.
to argue, and it's like every day, it's like the adversarial nature of the work. You're like arguing over everything. So it wasn't for,
Hmm.
but like I said, it was interesting. I was young. I was traveling across the country. I was, courthouses, courtrooms, federal courtrooms, across the country. It was interesting stuff, but after a while, kind of draining. So then I left private practice after about 10 years and then moved in-house and I worked for a company where I was more like a generalist. I oversaw litigation. I wasn't in the courtroom. I negotiated contracts, did a lot of HR stuff as well. And that was okay. But again, it wasn't that fulfilling for me. And it was around this time in 2011 where I just became seriously ill with a case of colitis. It really,
Mm.
6 weeks after the initial symptoms, like I started getting sick Valentine's Day 2011. I remember it was Valentine's Day because my wife and I were going to have a heart-shaped pizza, from this place down the street, that night and kind of celebrated kind of low key that way. And I got it from work. I couldn't do it. My stomach was bothering me and it was just like straight downhill. So like literally 6 weeks after those first symptoms arose for me, I was in emergency surgery to have my colon removed. You know, it was just
Mm,
it was that quick. The minutes I didn't respond to the medicine, any of the treatment. So for that next year, I mean, I was just, I had like my colon had basically like disintegrated, so all the nasty stuff was kind of circulating around inside of me, causing all sorts of chaos with my organs and everything. So it took me really, I was out of, out of commission, as the doctors were saying, out of commission for a year.
mm,
And as sick as I was, and what a scary time that was for me, there was this glimmer of hope that was like just things are going to get better. You're going to figure this out. Things are going to get better. And I remember in the hospital room in the ICU when I woke up after that surgery, one of the first things I did when I saw my wife, I'm like, go down. Can you please go down to the lobby shop, give me a notebook and a pen because this is going to make a good story. and so and so I
mm.
started writing that, and it kind of sparked my creativity. And from then on, I started writing it. Like interesting, when I was in law school and as a practicing attorney, I had no it was like 25 years or 20 years of writer's block, but that kind of traumatic event kind of opened up a different part of my mind. I don't know how that works. I don't know what to say more about that. And then that other than that was the reality for me. So yeah,
Interesting.
yeah.
Well, let me jump in for a moment. So first of all, I just want to acknowledge you. I haven't experienced this myself, but there's a number of people in my life who have had Crohn's or colitis or gluten intolerance. So I, from what I've learned through friends and loved ones, I want to acknowledge how challenging and how difficult that had to have been for you, both the getting to the point of surgery and then the recovery thereafter. So it's a lot to carry.
Mm.
And then you say that like you don't know what really prompted it or triggered it, but then suddenly you wanted to tell the story. I'm curious if you were to look back in your life, where might have you seen threads or kind of echoes of interest in telling stories that maybe kind of resurfaced and remanifested for you in that moment?
Well, yeah, I've always been a big reader of biographies, and I've read a lot of biographies of people that I found to be like really inspiring. I mean, one of which 127 hours. It's called, well, that was a movie. It's called Between a Rock and a Hard Place about Aaron Halston. I forget his name, but he was stuck in the
Mm,
crevice. He was hiking and he had to cut off you know, his
yeah.
arm. And so those stories like that, and just like I've always been inspired by stuff like people who have really challenged themselves. And I'm also an endurance athlete. I do triathlons and marathons and stuff like that. So I try to push my body, and I'm always like looking for more inspiration like that. So it's thought, well, this is like kind of like right in line with all that, all that sort of thing. So maybe
Mm.
someone could take something away from this as well. Because
What?
and like always in my head, I'm like, okay, I'm going to recover from this. And it's like when I do a race, and it's just like the finish line seems so far away, but you kind of just put yourself to do it. And I kind of like thought of it as a race, and I kind of, in my mind, thought back to the races I had done where I was just kind of on the verge of bonking, kind of giving up or whatever. And there's something inside of you that tells you to keep pushing forward and keep doing it. And that's sort of how I treated my recovery that year as well.
Mm. When what I'm hearing kind of like these parallel sort of threads, right? There's the recovery process and you kind of living through that and all that that meant, and then this process of documenting it. So what were those like? What was it like to live through the recovery? And then, what kinds of well, in what ways did you keep yourself kind of active in the
Yeah,
documenting
I
it
mean,
and writing about it?
writing about it really helped mentally for me. And I mean, I'm no stranger to therapy, and I've had some great advice, like as far as when you're going through something, journaling really helps you like get it all out there, because you can tend to like, at least I can tend to keep like emotions inside or feelings inside. So when I get it out there, put it on the page, I kind of have like a different standpoint, kind of step back and look at it. I'm like, okay, it helps me process it. So writing about it was like art therapy for me. And then, like I
Mm,
said, maybe someone could take something away from my story. I mean, I've written some essays about it that I've published, and I have put up, I've written a memoir about this as well that hopefully will see the light of day in the next year or
mm,
so. But that's not why I'm here. But just, hopefully, like maybe someone could take something away from it, and just the way that it helped me to write about it and to hear other people's stories. Because, like, I know we're going to get to this at the end, but one of the things organizations I'm thankful for is the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation, because so many of its members my wife actually has colitis as well. She had it
Mm,
before. She got it before I did. She's been able to keep it under check with medication. I wasn't so lucky, but
okay.
we've met so many supportive people, and we still see them every year. It's called Team Challenge, where it's an endurance aspect of the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation. Well, every year we'll do like 100-mile bike rides somewhere, and raise money for the charity. And every year we see these people, and they're all just so supportive, and they all kind of get it, because they've all either been through it or have family friends who've been through it as well. So it's really supportive that way.
Yeah. Well, and I also hear you saying how much you enjoy and appreciate the stories of others and so forth. I'm curious. I want to follow this thread here. Um, you've described yourself as an introvert a couple of times, and it's interesting in the work that I do, teaching classes and coaching and so forth. Like, and as a fellow introvert, there's a lot of misconceptions from people out there. Introverts are shy and introverts are antisocial, and that's not actually correct. It's that introverts like their alone time. They charge their battery from quiet time, solitude, processing, and so forth. But introverts can go out and express themselves and perform and be on stage. I mean, your whole career as an attorney was
Hmm.
a form of performance, right? So the reason I bring that up is it sounds like not only you documenting your journey, it wasn't just to inspire others, but that as an introvert, it was a way of expressing yourself.
Exactly.
And
Right.
you yourself said like it helped me mentally and so forth. Um, what else did you take from the process for you, not externally, but for you? What else would you attribute the process of kind of documenting your journey to?
I mean, it just showed me like how I could be resilient and how I could, persevere through like it was, quite literally the worst thing that's ever happened to me. I wouldn't wish that
Mm,
upon anyone. But like I said, like writing about it kind of just gave me like a new perspective. Like when you write it down, you go back and you read it, I'm like, okay, wow, that's I can also almost even like acknowledge that that was like an amazing thing that happened to me. And I had plenty of help, doctors, support staff, my wife, everybody else. But just to go back and read that, it's kind of like, wow, you did a pretty amazing thing there. And maybe, it gives me confidence gave me confidence to eventually get out from under that comma and pursue writing, with put more time towards my writing than practicing law. So yeah, kind of like charge me up, I guess.
yeah, would you say that that was kind of the inception point or the spark that prompted you to start writing more?
Absolutely. Like I said before, like it was weird. Like in law school and as a lawyer, I mean, I did a lot of writing, like legal writing, but nothing creative. And it was just like, yeah, when I was just sitting in the hospital and then, I was pretty much immobilized for the whole year. I was just that's what got me one of the things that got me through it was writing, and then I started getting all these other ideas, not just for that, but like for fiction. And I
Mm,
started writing short stories. I wrote short plays. And I had the courage after a while, like to submit them to see if it's any good. And when you get accepted, when you get a short story published or a play produced, it gives you more and more confidence. It gave me more and more confidence to keep going with it and write longer things and write a novel and write longer plays. So yeah, it was kind of, but absolutely, that was just like, yeah, it absolutely sparked me. Yeah,
what I'm personally taking from your stories so far, and I know we've got a lot more to explore, but I don't know about other people. I'm sure it's common, right? But I think about how much I love to walk and run and be active in the world and so forth, and what would happen if I lost my legs, right? And on the one hand, it would be very easy to go down the path of, well, my life's over. But what I'm hearing in your story is you were immobile for a year, right? So you lost the ability to do the things that you wanted to for at least that year that you were immobile. And yet you found another way to do things, express yourself, and then were surprised as a result of it because not only did it do what you wanted it to do, but it surprised you with these other things. Like you said, it sparked more creativity and so forth. And so, like, there's just that, right? Like, this whole you have choices about how you experience things that happen to you in your life and the things you choose to do. Let me stop rambling because that's what I'm doing. I mean, what more would you say to that, or how would you build or add on to that?
right. That's right. I mean, I had two choices to do nothing, sit back and feel sorry for myself, or to get better and do whatever I could to be well, whether mentally writing everything down, physically. I was, you talk about walking, running. losing like the ability to use your legs. I had like kidney failure, so I don't know whatever the treatment was. My legs had swollen up, my ankles were swollen up, so I
Mm,
couldn't even lift them on my own. So it was a real big thing just to be able to walk up and down the driveway where I used to run marathons and I
mm,
could barely make it up and down the driveway. So it's just little steps like that. There was always like just small victories along the way that I learned to appreciate. Like I said, getting out of the we had like a lift chair that went back, it kind of helped me get out. But just getting out of the chair on my own was just like a small victory that I had
mm.
to appreciate. So I just took it a step at a time like that. If you compartmentalize it like that rather than to look ahead and think, wow, this I have such a long journey, but just take it like a step at a time. It really helped me on that.
Mm. What did it take for you? Because I'm kind of curious. In every episode, and I talk about this in many episodes. People out there listening to your story, especially if they've been touched by what you've been touched with, oh yeah, 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 I get it. And we operate on assumptions as human beings, right? And yet, for you personally and specifically, it's an opportunity to peel back and us to hear more about your experience. You said take it one step at a time. What was that like for you? What were some of the dark moments or some of the bigger mental or emotional struggles during this whole process?
But yeah, I mean, I still had that doubt that, geez, I might not be the same again. I mean, my body was like drastically altered. I had a hole in my belly that, it was left to heal like inside out because of like the threat of infection or whatever. So I was just like,
Mm,
and like I said, there was like 40 pounds of fluid in my legs. I'm like, what if this never drank? I mean, there were definitely, I mean, doubts, lots of doubts. I don't mean to sugarcoat it. I mean, I wasn't like super stoked to have this happen to me, but it's just like, you got to
mm-hmm.
find a way to like, okay, you can either like, and my wife was a big help there. She was I described her as everything from my nurse to my coach to my number one fan. I mean, she was there all along the way, just helping me and supporting me. And like I said, since she had colitis before me, she knew a lot of like what I was going through, even though she might not have gone through exactly what happened to me, but through her friends and through our friends with the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation. And she was always getting me advice and, you know, uh, researching the ostomy bag, different ostomy bags and things like that. And
Mm,
just like helping me along the way, like helping me clean my wound because where it was, I couldn't really get to it because I was
yeah.
kind of so like sick or whatever. But yeah, that's just yeah, I'm supporting her as well.
Yeah. Well, what a gift. And it's hard enough to go through these things and experience these things on your own, and to have that support is really kind of key. It seems like what so many different people talk about with whatever comma they sat on or whatever hardship they went through, the importance of not only self-reflection and mindset, but also, community and connection, especially with someone who's clearly so important and close to you. Pete, let me ask the second question. You probably already answered some of this, but expand on this more and your story as well. Second question is, as you look back on this comma that you were sitting on, what did that create for you?
When I was stuck on that comma, I mean, it created both physical and mental issues and emotional issues. Had anxiety. I would have, there's certain clients or certain bosses that you work for, and when you get that phone call or email from them in the middle of the night or whatever, you're just like, oh, panic, panic, panic. So,
Hmm.
so there was that, and it was like, yeah, like I said, I had high blood pressure, and who knows? I don't know if I could attribute to work stress, but it certainly didn't help. So yeah, I just wasn't that happy. I mean,
Hmm.
I was making a good living and I was grateful for that. But again, in the back of my head, I'm like, I should be doing something else. I mean, it's just it doesn't seem right to me. It doesn't seem like a good fit.
Mm. And then you went forward. So you've kind of alluded to this a little bit. So kind of what were the next steps there since it created this anxiety and this unhappiness? Kind of where did it take you?
Yeah, so I was doing everything I could to figure out a life as a lawyer. I was a litigator, then I went in house, then I went to university, and not to criticize any of my employers or any place I work, but it never got any that much better for me. And I was working with a life coach as well.
Hmm.
And it's interesting, I think, in terms of story arcs, I guess, as a writer. And so that we had an interesting story arc, me and Karen, my life coach. And that when I first started working with her, our task was to find out what job I could have within the field of law that would I'll feel comfortable with, that'd be a better
Mm.
fit for me, whether it be in-house, whether it be public interest, whether it be whatever, government, whatever. So we started working through that and through a series of, she's sessions and then assessments. She was really very smart at assessments and evaluations. The end of at the conclusion was, oh wait, I don't want to protect this law anymore. I want to be a writer. I want to have
Mm,
autonomy. I want to be my own boss. I don't want to have to worry about, am I going to make partner? Am I going to be be a vice president? Blah blah blah. I want to write. And so that was like a complete story. Like instead of like, okay, let's find a job that we can be a lawyer. It's like, oh, we should quit our job. We should quit. I have to quit my
mm.
job. So
And yet, I think it's important to acknowledge that you were open. You were. It sounds like you were thorough. You were open to something new, and let's take it in these steps and stages. Like, can I find and create new where I'm already at? Is there something? It's kind of like the continuum of what's the least amount of change I can create to the most amount of change I can create, and everything in between. It seems like.
exactly. Yeah. And so by the end, it was like, okay, I need to quit my job. And we had this sort of running joke. She said it was like Groundhog Day because every time we'd have a session, she's like, so have you quit your job yet? And I've not done that. And it was like, it was like all I had to do was walk 50 feet because where my office was and where my boss's office was, it was like 50 feet. It was like a suite of rooms or whatever.
Hmm.
And she's like, did you walk the 50 feet? And I'm like, no, I don't walk the 50 feet. And I already had my,
Mm.
my resignation letter. I've been carrying around with me, but she was, every time we begin, she's like, have you walked that 50 feet? And so when I did walk the 50 feet, when I finally did that, she was like, she was the second person I called. First was my wife, obviously. And then I texted Kara. I'm like, okay, I walked 50 feet.
Well, I have a ton of questions, but I think what I'm going to do is ask the third question because I think that's a great springboard. Question three is, what have you learned about yourself as a result of sitting on this comma and, in your case, walking the 50 feet?
Just don't delay. I mean, it's going to happen. I mean, you can do it. And my motto is kind of like bet on yourself. I got my t-shirt on underneath here. It's bet on yourself. And that was the thing, just trust yourself, bet on yourself. Don't delay. And, again, I didn't rush into anything as a lawyer, I'm risk adverse. So I had planned out, my wife and I looked at our finances and and I had, looked at like other opportunities, to obviously make a living. So I looked into those as well, where I could do like remote work. And this is kind of right around the time of COVID. So everyone was working remotely. So it wasn't as difficult to find a remote job than part-time job or whatever. Well, I could write. But
Hmm.
yeah, what I learned from that is just trust yourself, do prepare as much as you can, but don't overthink it. I tend to overthink it. And when I do that, I get stuck.
Mm.
And just trust yourself and bet on yourself. That's kind of what I took away from that.
What kinds of things, this I think would be very inspirational to folks because trusting yourself is easy said, right? And doing it is another thing.
Right.
What kinds of things did you do for yourself in order to actually live the trust?
Right. Like I said, I tried to prepare as much as I could. And, we looked at our finances. My wife and I we got our debt down. We knew that, it was going to take a big hit. Obviously, I had a good income with benefits and stuff like that. And also then I looked at, okay, what am I going to do to make money? So I looked into that. I was prepared. Um, but yeah, it was not easy. Like I said, Karen and I went back and forth. It was a few months, I couldn't walk that
Mm.
50 feet. And so finally I did. It was just,
Mm.
yeah.
Well, it sounds like there was also, I mean, there was something beyond the doing and the acting, right? There was like a knowing in there. It's something that had you keep coming back to the same outcome, right? So even through all the exploration, you knew you were working towards a specific outcome. So there had
Right.
to be something in there about, the mental and emotional aspect of the trusting yourself too. So,
Exactly. And there came a point where I'm like, okay, you've overthought this way too much. Time to
mm,
act on it.
hmm Pete, you've described a little of this, but let me ask the fourth question. You can add and expand. What has changed for you as a result of sitting on that comma?
I'm definitely more relaxed, happier. I mean, I every so often I'll run into some former colleagues of mine and they're like, "Oh yeah, you look really different. You look you look good." And I was just
Mm,
and I feel good. I feel healthier. My body's healed, thank goodness. And I can do the things I used to do before. And yeah, I mean, and like I said, though, it's a work in progress because now, there's
mm,
challenges. What I'm doing now as a writer, like I said, I get a ton of rejections. And the first rejections, I was like, okay, maybe I made a mistake. Maybe I should, do something else. But you just work through it. And I think the challenges I've been through in the past with my health and stuck under the comma, I think have I've learned from that that I could, accomplish it. I mean, it's easier said than done. I still have to like push myself and there are times where I'm discouraged and I get stuck and it's difficult to get out of them, but eventually I do work my way out of them. So
Hmm. You mentioned at the very beginning a work in progress, and now you've mentioned it again here as well with some examples. In what other ways would you describe kind of yourself as a work in progress? Where else does that show up?
aside from my writing, I mean, just sort of my mental attitude, day to day, I still, I try to be super chill, but I still kind of, little things kind of bother me too sometimes. So I kind of step back. I'm like, okay, figure this out, whatever. They didn't clean the street this morning of the snow, but it's okay. You'll be able to get out of your driveway, things like that, just don't
Mm.
let like little things bother you like that. And yeah,
Well, and I think it's a powerful kind of reinforcement to many of us too, right? Like we can have big change in our lives, we can have big learnings in our lives, and there's still little parts of us that are always going to be with us, and we don't magically transform into another creature,
right.
but we kind of see and experience and maybe even present or manifest exhibit was the word I was looking for, some of these parts of ourselves in different ways, right?
Right.
Especially because what I'm hearing from you and your story is that, this 1 year event in your life was sort of like a massive reframe and not just a switch in direction of profession and vocation, but a reframe in a lot of other ways.
Right. And even now, like, I don't want to disappoint that person I was in 2011, when I was in the ICU, like, praying to get better and vowing that once I got better, I was going to change and do things I wanted to do. And I feel like I have to, live up to that person and to that person who I was and to continue with that mindset to, keep working and doing what you want to do.
Hmm. Pete, the last question, feel free to expand however much you want to, is what does getting off the comma look like for you?
It's freedom, I think. I think it's freedom. It's autonomy. Like I said before, it's a confidence. It's I can breathe again. It's just like the intangible. Like it's like when I
Mm,
finally walked that 50 feet and handed in my resignation, it was just like, oh wow, my lungs are clear. It's like it's that sort of intangible sort of feeling, and it's also knowing that there's going to be more and more challenges along the way, but you've gotten out from underneath that comma. Maybe there's going to be another comma. I mean, that's not the maybe not the only comma that's I'm going to come across in my life, but you kind of build upon what you did to get through that part to take you
mm.
forward.
Mm. Well, and it seems like that's a little bit of or there's a part of the athlete in you speaking there too, right? Because every race is training for the next race and so forth, right? So
Right.
yeah, the learning. And I want to credit you for you set a first in your episode today because people describe their experience with the comma in different ways. Sitting on a comma, laying on a comma, standing on a comma, walking across commas. And you're the first person who said stuck under a comma. So
Yeah.
I see that being a hashtag in your show notes. So Pete, I know there's probably so much more we could learn about you and your story today. If people wanted to look you up, find you, connect with you, follow you, that sort of thing, of course, I'll put the links in the show notes for people to click on. Walk us through where can people find you?
Yeah, on my website, peterjstavros.com. I've got all my stories listed under there, and I've got, the essays that I wrote, during my illness, about my illness, overcoming it. And, you've got posts of my other writings, and you can follow me and know when my next books are going to come out. Hopefully, 2026 will be the year for another one to come out. And
Nice.
I'm also on the Twitter and with the socials at Peter J. Stavros. I'm not on there a ton, but I think my website's the best place to kind of connect with me.
Okay, great. And again, those links are in the show notes, so folks can go and click on those and follow Pete and look into his work as well. So I was also thinking ahead to the last thing that we do in every episode, as we think about our purpose here is to certainly give you a voice, give your story a voice, lift up voices. Your story wouldn't be complete if we didn't give you the opportunity to do that for others. And so in this section we call acknowledgments, and it's your opportunity to boost, lift up, or promote others who matter to you. That could be causes, organizations, other creators, or just important people in your life. Who would you like to acknowledge today? And we'll be sure to put that in the show notes as well.
Yeah, first and foremost, my wife Christine. I mean, she's been everything to me. Always been supportive. It's not easy to live with me sometimes, I don't
Mm,
think. And she's done great, because I'm as an introvert, I can kind of keep to myself and it's like, okay, engage, like that. So,
mm-hmm.
but especially when I was sick and she knew exactly what I was going through and she rounded up the prayer list and then the support through the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation, another organization. First, people that I want to thank as well, Team Challenge, especially the folks who do those endurance races. They were all just so supportive, and we continue to support one another. I mean, you know, it's a disease that lasts forever. So people are,
Mm,
it comes and goes with people, and they have flares or whatever. So we support each other that way. And unfortunately, we only see each other once a year during these events, but we keep in touch throughout the year. So they've been a
mm.
big source of support for me as well.
Well, it's great though that you have an opportunity to kind of all get together once a year at an event.
Mhm.
That sounds pretty cool.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's got to be uplifting and you feel very kind of fulfilling, I guess, as an
oh,
introvert,
yeah.
even to feel so connected to other people in a way that's so intimate.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and
Yeah.
we always do like something cool. It's always like a 100 mile or 50-mile bike ride somewhere. We've gone to Portland, Maine, and we've gone to Minnesota, and so yeah, it's all over the country. So yeah, it's cool. It's cool to do. It's a cool accomplishment, and yeah, we all get together, and yeah, it's great to see everybody again.
Nice. We'll have all of those acknowledgments and some links in the show notes for
Oh,
people to
cool.
check out. So
Yeah, definitely. Especially if anyone's suffering through Crohn's or colitis, that's a great foundation, great support.
for sure. Pete, thank you again for being here with us this week, sharing your story. I know, despite the fact that it's been a while and you've written about it, it certainly can't be easy to kind of relive some of these difficult moments of your life. But we appreciate you sharing it with us and being able to give everyone here an opportunity to reflect on kind of their own experience with whether it's that challenge or challenges that are similar or challenges that bring out similar types of reactions, right? So I will look forward to following your journey and wish you a wonderful weekend ahead.
Thanks, Paul. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you, and I really enjoyed this. Thank you so much.
Awesome. What an honor it is for me to hear and share these powerful stories. I hope you feel the same way. Think about what you learned from this conversation. I encourage you to write it down in some form of journaling or reflection because surprises can reveal themselves to you when you write your thoughts down. If you were moved by today's conversation, pass it along to someone you care about. And if you do discover something you'd like to unpack further, book a call with me and let's talk about it. My links are in the show notes. Be sure to like this episode and follow the podcast here on this platform and all social media at Off the Comma. Feel free to interact and comment. Thank you for listening to this episode of Off the Comma. As always, keep noticing and keep listening.